There is a battleship lying on the bottom of the East China Sea with more than 3,000 men still sealed inside it. It has been there for 80 years. Nobody has salvaged it. Nobody has recovered it. Nobody has even seriously tried. And this was not some obscure escort or forgotten transport. This was the Yamato, the largest, heaviest, most heavily armed battleship ever built by anyone. And when it finally went down, the explosion put a mushroom cloud 6 kilometers into the sky that pilots watched from miles away. A ship that big, that famous, and that valuable should not still be sitting in the dark. And yet it is. What I want to know is why. Not how it sank. Most people who click on a video like this already know roughly how it sank. What I want to know is why, in 80 years, with technology that can reach the wreck and photograph every plate on it, nobody has brought any of it back up. The answer turned out to be more complicated than I expected, and one part of it stopped me cold when I found it. Start with what the Yamato actually was, because the numbers do a lot of the explaining on their own. Japan knew by the 1930s that it could never outbuild the United States. American shipyards could simply produce more hulls, faster, and no amount of planning was going to change that arithmetic. So Japan made a different bet. If it could not have more battleships, it would build battleships that nothing afloat could fight. Construction began in 1937 at the Kure Naval Arsenal in Hiroshima Prefecture. The dockyard itself was not big enough for what they intended to put in it, so they deepened it by a full meter just to take the hull. Cranes capable of lifting 350 tons had to be installed, and the whole thing was done behind screens. When the Yamato was launched in August 1940, the yard erected coverings and a canopy over the dry dock so that passing ships could not see what was inside. Workers were kept in the dark about the scale of what they were assembling. The secrecy was not a detail of the program, it was the program. What came out of that dock displaced close to 72,000 tons at full load. That is not simply large. It is heavier than any warship built before it, and heavier than any warship built since. And nothing has come close in the 80 years since. The hull ran to 862 feet. The main armament was 9 18.1-inch guns in 3 triple turrets, the largest naval guns ever mounted on a warship anywhere in the world. Each of those guns could throw a shell weighing 1,460 kilograms out to a range of over 42 kilometers. Each turret weighed 2,774 tons on its own, which made a single attacker's heavier than most of the destroyers that would sail in company with her. No Allied battleship in the water carried anything remotely like it. The Yamato was commissioned in December 1941, days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and for much of the war she served as flagship of the combined fleet. In June 1942, Admiral Yamamoto directed the Battle of Midway from her bridge, the battle that turned the Pacific War against Japan for good. She was present. She never fired a shot. And that turns out to be the pattern. This is the bit that got me when I was researching this. The most powerful battleship ever constructed spent almost the entire Second World War doing very little because Japan could not afford to use it. She moved between naval bases. She sat at anchor. She was considered too valuable to risk, and she drank fuel at a rate a country running out of oil simply could not sustain. In her whole career, the Yamato fired her main guns at enemy surface ships exactly once, at Leyte Gulf in October 1944. One engagement. That is the combat record of the biggest guns ever put to sea. By early 1945, there was almost nothing left of the fleet she was meant to lead. The carrier aviation was gone. Most of the capital ships were on the bottom. The Yamato sat at Tokuyama, burning through fuel that could not be replaced, waiting for orders that had nowhere sensible to go. The orders came in April. American forces had landed on Okinawa on the 1st of the month. When Emperor Hirohito was briefed on how the army intended to defend the island, he reportedly asked where the Navy was, what it was doing, and whether there were no more ships. That question traveled. Feeling the pressure from above, naval commanders put together Operation 10 Go, Operation Heaven. The plan was brutally simple. And once you understand it, you never quite look at the Yamato the same way again. She would sail for Okinawa with the light cruiser Yahagi and 8 destroyers, carrying only enough fuel to get there. There was no return leg. She would drive herself up onto the shore, deliberately ground herself, and then use those enormous guns as fixed artillery against the invasion fleet until the ammunition ran out. When the shells were gone, the crews would go ashore with rifles and keep fighting as infantry. It was so obviously a one-way trip that Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito, the officer chosen to lead it, initially refused. He called it futile and wasteful, and he was right on both counts. Captain Tameichi Hara of the Yahagi described the whole idea as throwing an egg against a rock. The captains who would actually carry the plan out were not told the full details until the 5th of April, 2 days before they sailed. And in the end, every single one of them did exactly as ordered. The crews were not offered a way out. Around 80 men were put ashore because they were new, sick, or unfit. 67 naval cadets from the academy at Etajima had reported aboard the Yamato 3 days earlier. They were sent home. Everyone else stayed. At 4 o'clock on the afternoon of April the 6th, 1945, the Yamato and her escorts left Tokuyama, and every man standing on those decks understood that the ship was not coming back. There is one small human detail from that departure that stayed with me. The fuel depot workers at Tokuyama quietly handed over almost every drop of oil left in the port, ignoring the instruction to supply a one-way ration. It was an act of defiance from men with nothing else to give. It probably would not have been enough for a return voyage anyway. It was never going to be. They did it regardless. American submarines picked up the force almost as soon as it passed through the Bungo Strait between the home islands. The contact reports went straight to Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher, commanding Task Force 58, who had 15 carriers and something close to 900 aircraft available to him. Admiral Raymond Spruance briefly considered sending a line of 6 fast battleships north to meet the Yamato gun-to-gun, a surface action between the biggest ships either navy possessed. He decided against it. The aircraft would be enough. The battleships were not needed, and that decision says everything about where naval warfare had ended up by 1945. On the morning of the 7th, American search planes found the Japanese force. At 10 o'clock, Ito turned west, as though withdrawing, a last attempt to buy a few hours. By 11:30, with American aircraft shadowing him continuously and no chance of shaking them, he turned back toward Okinawa for the final time. The attacks came in waves from 12:37 in the afternoon. Fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo planes from 15 carriers, close to 400 aircraft in total. The Yamato had 6 fighters overhead. 6. Down in the damage control spaces, Japanese officers were making decisions that are hard to read about even now. To stop the ship rolling over, they deliberately counter-flooded their own starboard engine and boiler rooms, knowing exactly what that meant for the hundreds of their own men working in them. There was no warning given and no way out for the crews below. They flooded the compartments anyway, because the alternative was losing the ship immediately. By 2:23 in the afternoon, the Yamato had absorbed at least 11 torpedoes and 6 bombs. She was listing hard, her speed was gone, and she was burning from bow to stern. Then the fires reached the forward magazines. The explosion sent a column of smoke 6 kilometers into the air. It registered on seismographs. Observers on the Japanese mainland, more than 200 kilometers away, saw it. Of the 3,332 men aboard, roughly 3,055 were lost. Around 270 came out of the water alive. The Yamato never got within 100 miles of Okinawa. The wreck was located in August 1985 by a Japanese expedition using the submersible Pisces II, lying about 290 kilometers southwest of Kyushu at a depth of 340 meters, roughly 1,100 feet. And what they found is central to the whole question. The ship is in 2 main pieces. The forward section rests on its starboard side, with the torpedo damage plainly visible. The stern section lies upside down. The main turrets, each near 3,000 tons, tore free when she rolled and are scattered separately across the seabed. The superstructure came away and lies apart from both. What is down there is not a battleship. It is an enormous field of shattered steel spread across a wide stretch of ocean floor. So why has nobody salvaged her? 3 reasons, and they compound each other until the whole idea collapses. The first is depth. 1,100 feet is not beyond modern technology, but it makes everything harder, slower, and vastly more expensive, and it is considerably deeper than most of the wrecks we have covered on this channel. The second is condition. The Yamato was not simply sunk, she was blown apart. There is no intact hull sitting down there waiting for lifting cables. A business group in Kure announced plans in 2009 to raise the main turrets from the forward section and put the cost in the billions of yen. Nothing came of it. The engineering was simply beyond reach. The third reason is the one that actually settles it. 3,000 men are still inside. In Japan, the Yamato is not a piece of hardware or a museum exhibit. The name itself is an old poetic word for Japan. The ship carries something the country has never fully put into words, a symbol of sacrifice, of a nation that sent its greatest weapon on a mission it knew would not come back, and of the men who sailed anyway. In 2015, a group of Japanese lawmakers began formal meetings to look at whether the wreck could be raised to recover remains. The meetings produced nothing. The sensitivity around disturbing that site is enormous, and it has not softened with time. And there is one final point that ends the discussion, regardless of how anyone feels about it. Even if Japan decided tomorrow that the Yamato should come up, no technology exists that can lift 72,000 tons of broken steel from 1,100 feet of water. She is not waiting to be raised. She is in pieces, scattered on the bottom, held together by nothing at all. The largest battleship ever built, the heaviest guns ever mounted on a warship. Sent out with fuel for one direction only, and she never reached her destination. 80 years on the floor of the East China Sea, with over 3,000 men still aboard. If you want more stories like this one, let me know in the comments which ship I should cover next, and subscribe so you do not miss it.